I used to think that sitting down was for the old and the tired. Today, at 64, I would trade every penny I ever earned just to be able to walk to the kitchen without gasping in agony. I didn't lose my legs in a tragic accident. I didn't fall off a roof or get hit by a car. No, I ground them away with my own pride, one stubborn, arrogant step at a time. For 40 years, I was the guy who never called a mechanic. I was the independent contractor who never took a sick day. My worth was measured in the weight I could carry and the hours I could stay on my feet. I was built differently, or so I told myself every time I looked at the younger guys on the job site and felt that surge of ego. It's hearing stories like this that makes us realize how many people still judge age the wrong way, isn't it? Life doesn't stop at 60. If you agree with this and are also here to help break these myths, please leave a like on this video. This tells YouTube that this topic is important and helps our channel bring this message to more people. Take a moment to subscribe so we can continue this journey together. When I hit 60, something shifted. It wasn't just about working anymore. It was about proving that 60 was the new 30. I wanted to hike the steepest trails, outwork men half my age, and show the world that aging was a choice. I wanted a last great adventure, a grand finale of strength. But then came the golden click. It started as a small rhythmic pop in my right knee every morning. It didn't even really hurt at first. It just felt like a rusted hinge finding its groove. I told myself it was just a morning ritual of the body, a sign that I was waking up. And then I found it. A way to make the click go away. A way to feel invincible again. I started a specific morning routine, a combination of a common over-the-counter pill and a certain exercise I saw online that promised to lubricate my joints. For 10 years, I thought I had found the fountain of youth in a plastic bottle. I felt like a machine. I was masking the sound of bone destroying bone with a chemical curtain, completely blind to the fact that my solution was actually the very thing dissolving my future. I thought I was winning. I thought I was cheating time. If I had only known that every painless step I took back then was a withdrawal from a bank account that was about to hit zero, I might still be standing today. I remember the day the specialist looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "John, your shelf life for these knees is expiring." He told me at 60 that I needed a partial replacement. He talked about recovery windows, reduced impact, and listening to the joint. But all I heard was a death sentence for my identity. To me, slowing down didn't feel like a medical necessity. It felt like a moral failure. I had this arrogant, loud voice in my head telling me that if I stopped now, I'd never get back up. I was at a crossroads. On one side was the surgery, months of being the guy in the walker, the humiliation of physical therapy, and admitting to my younger crew that I was finally human. On the other side was my golden click ritual. Those little blue pills and that morning stretch that felt like it was forcing oil into a dry engine. I stood in that sterile office, looking at the x-ray, and I chose to lie to myself. I told the doctor I'd think about it, but the second I hit the parking lot, I threw his pamphlet in the trash. I told myself he was just another guy trying to sell me a procedure I was too tough for. I decided to double down. I went to the pharmacy and bought the maximum strength anti-inflammatories in bulk. I made a secret pact with my own ego. I would trade whatever was left of my cartilage for 3 more years of looking like a hero on the job site. I convinced myself that as long as I couldn't feel the bone grinding, it wasn't actually happening. That was my point of no return. I walked away from the fix and committed to the lie. I chose the quick fix of a chemical mask over the hard truth of a scalpel. In that moment, I didn't just sign a contract for a new renovation job. I signed away my ability to walk at 70. I crossed a threshold where the damage stopped being an injury and started being an erasure. I was burning my own house down just to stay warm for one more night. I started every morning with a ritual I called my oil change. 2 maximum strength blue capsules washed down with black coffee, followed by that miracle stretch I'd found on a late-night fitness forum. For the first few months, I felt like a god. The stiffness that used to take 3 hours to fade was gone in 20 minutes. That terrifying, gravelly grinding sound in my right knee, silenced. I felt like I had hacked the human body, like I'd found a loophole in the contract of aging that no one else was brave enough to use. I went back to the job site with a chip on my shoulder and a point to prove. I was carrying bundles of shingles up ladders, while the 30-year-olds were leaning on their hammers taking breathers. I'd catch them looking at me, the old man outworking them, and I'd just smirk. Built different, I'd whisper to myself. I was living a second youth, fueled by a chemical curtain and a massive bloated ego. I truly believed I had outsmarted my surgeon. I thought his x-rays were just opinions, and my ability to climb a ladder was the truth. But looking back from this chair today, I can see the cracks I refused to acknowledge. I wasn't healing, I was just turning off the alarm system while the house was burning down. Have you ever felt that? That sharp, hot needle in your joint that seems to work itself out after a few minutes of movement? I told myself it was just getting the blood flowing. In reality, it was the sound of bone-on-bone friction finally becoming so hot and inflamed that the nerves simply gave up and went numb. I'd get home at night, and my knees would be the size of grapefruits, throbbing with a heartbeat of their own. I'd just ice them down, swallow another round of anti-inflammatories, and tell my wife it was just a good day's work. I was addicted to the image of the invincible provider. I ignored the way my gait was changing, the way I started swinging my leg out to the side to avoid a direct strike. I blamed my boots. I blamed the cold morning air. I blamed the uneven terrain of the site. I blamed everything except the truth. I was burning my own foundation to keep the lights on for one more day of pride. I felt like I was in total control, never realizing that every painless step was actually a hammer blow to a joint that had nothing left to give. Before I tell you what the surgeons found when they finally opened me up, I want to ask you, are you feeling a sharp needle in your knee right now that you're telling yourself is just part of getting older? Tell me in the comments. Let's be honest with each other for once. Are you listening to your body, or are you just silencing it? I thought I was the master of my own biology, but the universe has a way of reminding you that you're just flesh and bone, usually at the most humiliating moment possible. It didn't happen on a high-stakes roofing job or while climbing a steep trail. It happened in the cereal aisle of a local grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon. I reached for a box of oats, shifted my weight to my right leg, and my knee didn't just click. It simply resigned. There was no warning, no stiffness to work through, just a sickening, wet slide of bone grinding against bone, followed by a complete loss of structural integrity. My leg turned into a wet noodle. I hit the linoleum floor so hard the sound echoed off the shelves, and for the first time in 60 years, I couldn't get back up. I remember sitting there, surrounded by boxes of Cheerios, and my first instinct wasn't to call for help. It was to reach for my pocket. I frantically grabbed for my bottle of anti-inflammatories. I thought, I just didn't take enough this morning. The oil change was too light. I was desperate to believe the lie for just 5 more minutes. But as I stared at my knee, which was already beginning to throb and deform under my jeans, the first bitter taste of reality hit me. The blue pills hadn't stopped working. They had just run out of things to hide. There was no more cartilage left to lubricate. I had spent every last painless mile I had bought with those chemicals. That was the moment the rules of the game changed. A teenage clerk had to bring over one of those motorized carts and help me into it. Me, the guy who carried 80-pound bundles of shingles up ladders. I sat in that plastic seat, my hands shaking on the steering controls, and I realized I wasn't the provider anymore. I was the liability. The tension I had been ignoring for 3 years had finally snapped, and the golden click had turned into a permanent silence. I wasn't built different. I was just a man who had burned his own foundation to keep the lights on for one more day of pride. And now, the house was finally coming down. I had officially lost control. I didn't call a surgeon after that day in the grocery store. I called my ego instead, and it told me exactly what I wanted to hear. It was just a fluke. You just hit a slick spot. Rest for 2 days, double the dosage, and get back out there. I became a master of the lame excuse. When my wife asked why I was using the wall to steady myself, I told her I'd just caught a dizzy spell from standing up too fast. When my old foreman called with a lucrative deck job, I lied and told him I was booked solid for months, while I sat in my recliner with ice packs taped to my legs, staring at a stack of mounting bills. I was drowning financially because I couldn't stand, but I was too proud to admit I was sinking. I started pushing everyone away. I stopped going to our weekly veterans breakfast because I couldn't handle the long walk from the parking lot to the booth. I snapped at my daughter when she offered to help me move a literal bag of groceries. I chose a self-inflicted exile in my own living room over the humiliation of being seen as a broken man. I wasn't just losing my cartilage, I was losing my soul to a toxic, stubborn pride. Have you ever found yourself snapping at the people who love you most just because they noticed a truth you're trying to hide from yourself? That's the most dangerous part of this journey. The pain doesn't just stay in your joints, it migrates to your heart. I sat in that dark house, surrounded by the silence of the phone I refused to answer, convincing myself that I was protecting my image. In reality, I was just a coward in a recliner, watching my world shrink to the size of a four-legged walker I was still too arrogant to buy. I had no one left to turn to, because I had convinced everyone I didn't need them. I was king of a very small, very painful hill. The X-ray didn't show a joint anymore. It showed a wreckage. I sat in that same sterile office 3 years after I'd thrown the doctor's warning in the trash, but this time, I wasn't smirking. I was staring at a screen that displayed what he called the ghost knee. There was no space left, no cushion, no hope. Just two jagged gray masses of bone locked together like rusted gears in a machine that had finally seized for good. The surgeon didn't offer me a recovery window this time. He looked me dead in the eye, his voice cold and clinical, and said, "John, you didn't just use your knees, you consumed them. You traded your 70s and 80s for a few more months of looking tough on a ladder, and now there's nothing left for me to anchor a replacement to." That was the moment the floor finally gave way. It wasn't just the physical pain, which felt like someone was driving a red-hot chisel into my marrow every time I breathed. It was the total, suffocating humiliation. Because I had waited too long, because I had used those blue pills to silence the alarm while the house was burning, I was no longer a candidate for a simple fix. I was a liability. I lost the business. I lost the deck jobs. And eventually, as the medical bills piled up and my inability to move turned my golden years into a financial graveyard, I lost the house I had spent 40 years building. I moved into this cramped first-floor rental because I can't navigate a single step. I look in the mirror every morning and I don't see a warrior or a provider anymore. I see the architect of my own destruction. I see a man who was so terrified of being seen in a walker at 60 that he guaranteed he'd be trapped in a chair at 64. I betrayed my future for a few more days of pride. And now, the silence of my legs is the only thing I have left to listen to. There's a specific kind of silence that follows the death of a lie. It's heavy, cold, and it smells like the stale air of this first-floor rental I never wanted to live in. Sitting here, staring at my legs that look like they belong to a stranger, I've finally stopped reaching for the excuses. I've run out of people to blame and oil changes to perform. I spent 3 years pretending I was a warrior, but today, my battlefield is the 12 feet between my bed and the kitchen sink. And most days, the kitchen is winning. I finally stopped reaching for those maximum strength blue pills. I didn't throw them away because I found a miracle cure. I threw them away because I realized I was just paying a company to help me commit suicide by inches. I had to look at that X-ray of my ghost knee, that jagged gray wreckage of my own making, and finally admit the truth. I didn't just use my body, I consumed it. I traded the porch I built with my own hands for a plastic chair in a room that feels like a tomb. There is no glorious comeback story coming. There's no montage of me learning to run again or hiking a trail at sunset. There is only the brutal, daily confrontation with the wreckage of my own ego. I'm trying to salvage what's left of my dignity, trying to learn how to exist as a man who needs a stranger's arm just to see the sun. I'm fighting for survival now, not for pride. I'm just trying to find a way to live in this new, smaller world. without letting the bitterness swallow me whole. And the hardest part, the part that keeps me awake when the pain flares at 3 a.m., it's knowing that if I had just been weak enough to sit down 4 years ago, I'd still be standing today. I look out the window of this rental every afternoon, watching my grandkids run across the grass, and the weight of my regret is heavier than any bag of cement I ever carried. I'm not out there with them. I'm here, in this chair, because I was too strong to be sensible. I thought I was a warrior, but I was just a fool trading my future for a few more months of looking tough. That morning ritual I told you about, the handful of maximum strength ibuprofen and those forced, deep squat lubrication stretches I found online, they weren't a fountain of youth. They were a silencer on a gun pointed directly at my own joints. I wasn't fixing the problem. I was just cutting the wire to the alarm while the building was engulfed in flames. By the time I stopped feeling the pain, it was only because there was nothing left for the nerves to attach to. I chemically dissolved my own warning system, and by the time I woke up, my cartilage was a ghost. Please, look at me. Look at this room. This isn't aging. This is the result of a betrayal. I betrayed the 80-year-old man I was supposed to become because the 60-year-old man I was couldn't handle being seen as human. If you're feeling that sharp needle in your knee, if you're hearing that click and reaching for a bottle of pills to drown it out so you can keep pushing, stop. Just stop. Your body doesn't negotiate, and it doesn't forget a debt. The pain you're silencing today is a withdrawal from a bank account that doesn't have overdraft protection. When it hits zero, the lights go out for good. Do not let your ego write a check that your legs can't cash. Learn from my wreckage. Listen to the whisper of the click before it becomes the scream of the wheelchair. I'm begging you, from a man who can no longer stand on his own. Sit down today so you can still walk tomorrow.